Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Clock Hour. I'm your host, Marv Kennel. I have a very, very special guest. Y'all notice I call all of them very special because they are special to me. Miss Renee Tartaglione. Did I say that right? And she's calling in from Philly. How you
Yes, you
doing?
did. I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah? So,
Yep.
what you been up to?
Well, right now we are in the midst of getting ready for a primary in Philadelphia to elect the mayor, city council, and all of the row offices.
Wow.
And I come from a very political family for over 50 years, so we're in the mix of that right now. As a matter of fact, mostly everybody's out in the street stomping for signatures because you need so many signatures to get on the ballot.
Okay.
And since I was a commissioner in Philadelphia for 25 years with that type of environment with voting and voter registration and petitions, I've been advising people on how to make sure when they file their petitions, they have all the paperwork and all the necessary signatures they need. So it's a very busy time right now, but I love it.
Right. That's your thing.
That's my thing. And I'm also very much involved with women who were put in the same situation I was before and after the fact, trying to give them advice and help them when they're going in to do what's best for them. Because when you get in there, your time is what you make it.
Right. And how to maneuver.
Exactly. And also, people, when they come out, how to adjust, especially with the girls with young kids and trying to find work. It's not easy. So I feel good about that.
Now, for the people, how much time did you do?
I did 2.5 years in Danbury, and I've been on the ankle bracelet for 2 years. And
Okay.
I get off the bracelet in June.
All right.
And then I'll have 3 years probation.
Now, when I met you, you spoke about your mom.
Yes.
What did she do? That's what fascinated me, along with yourself.
Okay. My mother in 1975, well, 1974, she has 5 kids and she was very much involved in our neighborhood. And she went to a zoning meeting about something that was coming into the neighborhood and she was very vocal about it. And the one man who was in office at that time brushed her off and told her she was insignificant. She's the wrong person to do that to her.
Right.
She then came home and decided she was going to run for office and run against this person.
Okay.
And at that time, she was the only woman. She won, and she was the only woman at that time in the field of all men in 1975. She
Right.
was the first woman who was elected citywide in Philadelphia in
Okay.
1975. Okay. She then stayed in office for 40 years in a city where there's over 1 million registered voters. That means 20 elections. She was reelected to 10 4-year terms.
Now, during the 70s, 75, 74, that's when they had that move thing going on.
Exactly.
What do you know about that?
Well, I know that at the time, let me just back up a little bit and give you a little background about my mother and Frank Rizzo. At that time, Frank Rizzo's machine was very powerful in Philadelphia. And one of the men who was running for the office that my mother was running for, he got jammed up with something. So Rizzo wanted a woman, an Italian woman, on his ticket, and he tapped my mother. So she was swept in on his ticket. So
Okay.
there was a certain amount of loyalty there, to an extent. My mother was very instrumental. It was mostly a lot of white men at that time that were in office. And
Right.
a lot of doors were closed to African American, Hispanics, Asians. And my mother had an open door policy, which brought a lot of African Americans and then later Hispanics and now Asians into the play of politics by showing them and teaching them how to do things properly and how to get on the ballot and how to win.
Right.
When this all first happened with Move and Rizzo, my mother would go to meetings with say 500 African Americans. And when she went in, they would boo her. They would say, "Oh, you're with Rizzo, you're a racist," and so on and so forth. She
Right.
would take her coat off and she would say, "I was invited to speak here and I'm going to speak."
Right.
And then she spoke and she would tell them how if you have a, she said, if you ever saw a piano and you play the white keys, you got certain music that was nice. And if you played the black keys alone, you get certain music, but it's not as good as if you play the black and the white keys together.
Right.
When
Makes
you
sense.
play the black and white keys together, you get beautiful music.
Right.
So she said, and that's what we have to do as a city. We have to work together and not be racist and not judge people because of the color of their skin, and we're going to be successful. And from that point on, she had a coalition with the African American community and then the Hispanic community once my husband came into the picture, because my husband's Latino and
Right.
he's a big activist down here.
Okay.
So that's where my mother and Rizzo came in. And there was a certain amount of loyalty there,
Yeah.
but she was always pro African American, and part of her success over the 40 years was that she helped so many African Americans and Latinos.
Now you were around during what was that? 85, 84, 85 when they
Yes,
did you were
yes.
around during that? How
Pardon me?
much how much is actually accurate on that? I'll keep going back to that because that it just fascinated me.
Well, I think that over a long period of time, there were attempts to try to diffuse that situation in the neighborhood with the neighbors and the police and
Right.
Move.
Right.
And it just wasn't successful.
Right.
So Rizzo made a big mistake and he did what he did.
Right.
And that tarnished him for life
Right.
because that's just not something that you do to anybody. And it's sad because he was a good mayor and he wasn't a racist. He just got frustrated with the police and the neighborhood and the demonstrations. And unfortunately, to his detriment, that's his legacy that he bombed, Move.
Right. Okay. Okay. I get it. I get it. Because I when me and you spoke about this before, so I go do a little homework and get into it and just to get a better understanding. But you're telling me from the ground floor, so I rather do that than dig into the news to get that type of information or get that type of understanding from something.
Right. It
Yeah.
was a very volatile situation. The neighbors were the neighbors wanted it gone.
Right.
Uh, but there was always interaction with the Move and with the police, and at that time, um, the police department was a lot different at that time.
Right.
They weren't as trained to be as sensitive as they need to be today in
Right.
certain situations. So the whole situation all the way around was very volatile and very difficult to manage. And unfortunately, that's what happened.
Yeah. I understand. So you're actually working with women before and after. So you're
Yes.
okay. I was down there last year, September. I love Philly for some reason.
Philly's a
Philly
great town.
Philly's okay with me. I was down
Mm-hmm.
there for a wedding. September, I think it was. Yeah, September, sometime or another. I move around so much that I can't keep up. But yeah, so long as you've been doing okay, and any words of wisdom as far as right now goes for people looking at going in?
Yeah, and I've been advising different people, men and women, um, who are in this situation, and I have to say to you, I have to thank you because you were very instrumental in helping me get through a very difficult time in my life. You
Right,
gave me the opportunity to work and stay busy and earn a apprenticeship. And when I tell people, when you go in, you have to keep busy.
yes,
I worked with you. I was the town driver. I worked in recreation. I took every program that was available to take. I exercised, I walked, I prayed, I helped in the chapel. People have to stay busy
right,
because if you think too much, it's overwhelming. It's
yes,
overwhelming. After 9 o'clock count, I would be in my bed and I would be saying my rosary because I wanted my mind to stop worrying about my family, to stop missing home, to stop worrying that everything was okay everywhere. And because I was kind of like the second string glue, and I was very much missed, and I worried about everybody. So my advice, best advice to people, is stay as busy as you can.
right,
Don't fight with the administration. Look how I was blessed
right,
because I did everything I did. I could still be there.
right.
Now I'm in my home.
And we did a lot while you were with me.
Yeah, yeah.
We did a
We're,
lot.
we were. Listen, did a good thing for the girls. They loved the food.
Right,
They
right,
loved what we did.
right. And and a lot of times, like me myself, I do this for y'all. This is not about me, but most of the people that come on board, they thank me and stuff like that. You don't know what you've done until someone else explains it to you,
Exactly.
you know. And I was always just a little quirky at times, but I wanted y'all to understand that this wasn't about me. It wasn't about me. That whole thing, I never even younger years, I never saw myself working in that environment. But now that I'm retired and everything, now I see you all doing what you're doing out there. I try to do my part. That's all.
And I don't think you realize how very much you help so many people. And you're going to be blessed very much for that because it's especially like when I was in there with some of the girls that had young children, and like my one bunkie, she had two small kids. Her husband was incarcerated. Her mother was deceased. I still talk to her because she's all alone. I'm
Right,
blessed. I have a strong family support.
right,
There's a lot of people who don't have that. So
right.
I try to help there whenever I can.
And you hear
And
the
you were
stories.
part of that in there
Right,
because you gave people the opportunity to feel like they were a part of something.
right. And
Another thing I learned in there, and I don't mean to interrupt you,
no, you're good.
and my mother always taught me this, but I realized, there was one girl in particular that I used to see and I used to turn the other way and run away from. But you never know what shoes people are walking in. I avoided her because she was loud and she was always arguing. And the one day, my husband came faithfully every weekend. And I was ironing my uniform one Friday, and this particular girl that I'm speaking of, she was sitting on the steps by the ironing board and she was crying. And I said, "Why are you crying?" And she said, "Well, my grandmother's coming to see me and I don't know how to iron." Well, I felt so ashamed that I judged this girl. And then after I showed her how to iron and taught her how to sew and learned her story about her mother and father was on drugs and she was selling drugs to take care of her younger siblings, I realized that you can't judge somebody by the way they're acting because you don't know why they're acting that way.
Right,
and to try to talk to people and ask them why they're so upset and try to help. We all have to try to help each other in this world because everybody's stressed out, everybody's angry, and we need to be a family. We need to help each other.
Yeah, you know what? To an extent, I agree, but there's other entities that benefit by the division. And sometimes it gets a little difficult, with the basic understanding.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went to Florida the other week, and just thinking about, I had seen that the governor on TV on what he was saying about the history and everything, changing the curriculum, taking the curriculum out of the schools, and it interests me to dig even deeper into it because this history is everybody's history when you look at it, and you're taking it away and you're filtering it on what you want to be taught. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
having a discussion with someone on sex ed classes. I said one parent may have a problem with it, but not thinking about the other students in the class that may not have access to that knowledge or may not know how to have that discussion. And I said you can't scream and yell for me when you have 20 other students or something that may need it.
Well, I think a big part of that issue that I'm hearing is that they think they're starting it too young. They
I
think they're
get it,
too young.
but
They want, kids aren't staying innocent long enough
right,
anymore. I mean, I was behind my mother's feet till I was, I don't know how old. I didn't even know what that was,
right,
and they just want the kids to stay innocent a little bit longer because they're growing up too quick. And I agree with you. It should not be because one, two, or five people complain. The majority should rule. That's what a democracy is about.
right,
But some of these leaders, they're they're scaredy cats, and they can't stand up to people. That's why my mother was so. Getting back to my mother, that's why my mother was so successful over the years because she was never scared to
right,
say what she thought and to fight for what is right. But some of these guys they're scaredy cats. Oh, they can't articulate the whole picture because they're afraid that they're going to get somebody mad. And when you're afraid not to get somebody mad, you wind up getting everybody mad. So it's counterproductive.
right. And even I was in the school system last year, and they have these computers, powerful computers in their hands, which are their phones. And I was explaining to them, I had went to Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, because I wanted to see it. And they didn't know what I was talking about. So I made them look it up. Look it up. And then now I got your attention. Once they looked it up, I got your attention. So I think by them starting young is because people are giving their kids these phones real early. And you look at them, you got a substitute in the class, and everybody's head is down in their phones. But at the same time, you have that phone, that smartphone, and you don't know nothing. You're not learning anything. Utilize it to learn something. So I made him Google it. I said, you have Google, so look this up. This is real. I told him
Listen,
half of y'all
I
we
feel
wouldn't be sitting here together if it wasn't for stuff like that going on.
I feel sorry for the next generation coming up because um, there's not enough guidance, and there's too much technology out there.
Right.
So it's very frightening. It's very frightening. It's very
Atari came out when I was a kid.
Mhm.
That was it. But
Listen,
the
it's funny because my house is I'm the matriarch now,
right,
and I have the family dinners here, the birthdays, whatever, and the kids they're sitting at the table, and I look at them and I say, no phones.
right.
We're going to have a family dinner. Put the phones away. These kids can be driving in the car together and they're texting each other. Right?
Yeah. And it's to me it does them a disservice
It
because
does.
you don't have no conversations.
And that's what I tell them. I say, we're going to sit at this table and we're going to talk as a family, so put the phones down.
Put the phones down.
But a lot of people don't do that. A lot of parents don't do that.
Right,
You know, we have to be hands on with these kids with everything.
right,
With everything.
right.
Everything.
That's why I wouldn't say I get it with the too young. I'm gonna tell you a quick story. When I first started there, right,
Mm-hmm.
I was walking past this young lady, and I said she was crocheting little footsies, right? For I thought it was for her baby. She said no, it's for my grandbaby. I said, I backed up. I said, what'd you say? These are for my grandbaby. Now, looking at this young lady, I knew she wasn't even older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And she was still in her 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked her, you don't mind me asking you, but how old are you? And she said, I think she was 27 at the time. I'll never forget this. And it was either she had her baby at 12 and her
Babies have
daughter,
babies.
yeah, either it was 11 and her daughter was 12, or either or. I can't get the dates right, but that that hit me because I was like, what? Who would do that to a child? You know, and that story always stuck with me. Like I was having a discussion with someone. I was like, I understand too young, but they have access to everything now. There's
And
too much access.
right, and I want
Limiting,
to
like you
I want
said, put the
to
phones
listen,
away.
and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I don't want to lose the thought.
Right.
You know, I was fortunate, very fortunate, that I had two strong parents that stayed on top of me, that made sure I was home a certain time, that made sure my homework was done, that wouldn't let me go out if I was dressed inappropriately, that
Right.
if they thought I had too much makeup on, I had to go take it off, that I would say to my mother, everybody's going. She would say, I'm not everybody's mother. You're not going. If they want to come
Right.
here, they can come here. I don't think that that close structure and that close accountability isn't there anymore. And I live across the street from a park,
Uh-huh.
and my bedroom faces my front of my house. My bedroom faces the park. It's like 10 o'clock at night, and there's kids there, 11, 12 years old. Why aren't you home?
Right.
These are mothers.
And then,
Then if you
some of
say
them,
something to the mothers,
the
they want
states
to
took
fight
the
with
power away.
you. Yeah,
What are
yeah.
they? Children and Family Services. They took a lot of the parents' power away. I was a single parent, so I understood. And there was certain boundaries that I knew I didn't care. I didn't care, and I told them I didn't care. I don't care. You can call them, but this is how it's going to be done. This is
Exactly.
what needs to be done, and this is how it's going to be done when I say it's to be done. You know what I
Mm,
mean? But some parents they fear that, and they took their power away. Like I said, I was in the schools last year, and I was like, no, let me get up out of here because it was taking me back to corrections. And I
mm,
didn't want to go back to corrections. You know what I mean? Someone
exactly.
asked me, you don't know who I am? I was like, yeah, you're a kid. and your name is such and such. They ain't tell you about me? Excuse me? They ain't tell you about me. So I had to turn certain mechanisms off to be there. And
Right.
they're in trouble. They're in trouble.
I'll tell you a funny story. I'll go back to my mother.
Hmm.
My mother and father had 4 daughters and 1 son. And my brother came home one day. He was 16, and he said to my mother, "I'm dropping out of school uh, because I want to go." At that time, my dad had a bar. I want to go work with dad. My mother said, "Oh, you're dropping out of school?" So he went upstairs, and we were setting the table, and we were getting ready for dinner because we always had to sit down for dinner. So he comes down and sits at the table, and my mother picks up his placemat, she picks up his glass, she picks up his cup, she picks up his fork. And he's like, "Mom, what are you doing?" She said, "That's my plate, that's my cup, this is my food, this is my house, and if you're not going to school, you're not living here." So he gets up and he storms out and he says, "I'm leaving." And, the 4 girls are like, "Mom, no, we're crying.
Yeah.
And she just sat down, stone faced, and she was eating. 2 days later, he came home and he said, "Okay, Mom." He said, "I'm going to go to school." She said, "Okay."
Right.
He went to graduate from school. He then had to go to community college before he went to Temple Law School and
Right.
went on to become an attorney.
All right.
Now, if she would have just accepted that,
Right.
where would he have been?
Right. See, you're right. Well,
So
I gotta
you,
cut.
that,
I
that's
gotta
that's
cut you
your
short.
point,
Uh
that
huh.
the parents get scared and
Right.
they accept certain things.
Right. I got to cut you short, but I thank you for being my guest today. This is for the people, by the people, about the people, the Clock Hour. Thank
And
you. I'm going to have to bring you back pretty soon.
and the
Thanks for
next time
tuning
you
in.
come to Philly, stop by.
Right. Good to see you. I'm coming
God
by to
bless.
get something to eat.
Thank you for everything.
Right. Have a good day.